Trump delays high US tariffs on Chinese goods to another 90 days. South Korea and Vietnam agree to double bilateral trade to 150 billion US dollars. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. I'm Sahih and you're watching World Today. Malaysia and Bangladesh have reaffirmed commitments to strengthen ties in trade, education, halal industry and semiconductors. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim made those remarks after welcoming Chief Advisor of the Government of Bangladesh, Dr. Muhammad Yunus, who is on a 3-day official visit to Malaysia.
We have continued to have energy cooperation and, with Petronas and with Axiata in the energy sector and the telecommunication sector. And now we want to strengthen this into halal and STEM and research and semiconductor.
Echoing similar remarks, Yunus reiterated the profound bilateral relations between both nations, highlighting regional and international developments of mutual interest.
We are looking for investment from Malaysia, and that's what we've been discussing. We are open for business. Bangladesh has a tremendous opportunity. It has its own human resources that we can offer, and also technology that we can offer in Bangladesh.
Both leaders also witnessed the exchange of several memoranda of understanding MOUs covering defense, energy, higher education, diplomacy, halal development and private sector cooperation. Bangladesh is Malaysia's second largest trading partner and export destination in South Asia. The visit is expected to further strengthen bilateral relations and expand cooperation in mutually beneficial areas, building on the strong ties established since diplomatic relations began in 1972. Condemnations poured in from the United Nations, the EU and media rights groups Monday after an Israeli strike killed an Al Jazeera news team in Gaza. Anas Al-Sharif, a prominent Al Jazeera correspondent, aged 28, and 4 of his colleagues were killed on Sunday in an Israeli strike targeting Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. Hospital Director Muhammad Abu Salmiya said a 6th journalist, freelance reporter Muhammad Al-Khaldi, was killed in the strike that targeted the Al Jazeera team. Israel confirmed it had targeted Sharif, whom it accused of having affiliations with Hamas, alleging he posed as a journalist. Al Jazeera said 4 other employees, correspondent Muhammad Riki and cameraman Ibrahim Zahir, Muhammad Nufal and Mu'amin Aliwa, were killed when the strike hit a tent set up for journalists outside the main gate of Al-Shifa. Media freedom groups have condemned the Israeli strike on journalists, which the UN Human Rights Agency called a grave breach of international humanitarian law. The European Union's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas said Monday that the EU condemns the killing of 5 Al Jazeera journalists. Reporters Without Borders says nearly 200 journalists have been killed in the war. Israel prevents international reporters from entering Gaza since the war began. Norway's sovereign wealth fund said Monday that it was selling its investment in 11 Israeli companies following reports it had invested in an Israeli jet engine maker, even as the war in Gaza raged. Nikolai Tangen, chief of Norges Bank Investment Management and BIM, which manages the fund, said the decision was taken in response to extraordinary circumstances. Tangen in a statement said the move would reduce the number of Israeli companies the fund's Council of Ethics needed to supervise. Norway's wealth fund is the biggest in the world with a value of around $1.9 trillion, with investment in more than 8,600 companies spanning the globe. Last week, Norwegian newspaper Aftenposten reported that the fund had invested in Israeli Smash Engines Holdings, which makes parts of engines used in Israeli fighter jets. Tangen later confirmed the reports and said the fund had increased its stake after the Israeli offensive in Gaza began. The revelations led Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store to ask Finance Minister and former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg for a review. Going forward, NBIM also said that all investment in Israeli companies managed by external managers would be moved in-house and that it was terminating contracts with external managers in Israel. US President Donald Trump on Monday delayed high US tariffs on Chinese goods from snapping back into place for another 90 days, according to a White House official. Those tariffs were set to resume Tuesday, but Trump signed an executive order hours beforehand that extends the deadline until mid-November. The delay was the expected outcome from the latest round of talks between US trade negotiators and their Chinese counterparts, which took place in Stockholm in late July. If the deadline were not extended, then US duties on China would have shot back up to where they stood in April, when the tariff war between the world's largest trading nations was at its peak. At the time, Trump had cranked up blanket tariffs on Chinese imports to 145%, and China had retaliated with 125% duties on US goods. But the two sides agreed to pause most of those tariffs in May after negotiators met for the first time in Geneva. The US pared its tariff back to 30% and China dropped its levies to 10%. Monday's extension is the latest example of how Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs have shifted with little prior notice, a dynamic that has made US trade policies unpredictable for many businesses. Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser on Monday pushed back on Trump's move to take control of DC's police and deploy the National Guard, saying the city will cooperate but defends its autonomy and rejects claims of rampant crime. Bowser told the media during a press conference that core services will continue. She pointed to sharp drops in violent crime and renewed calls for DC statehood, noting the city lacks control of its National Guard under limited home rule.
And while this action today is unsettling and unprecedented, I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past, that we're totally surprised. I can say to DC residents that we will continue to operate our government in a way that makes you proud. We will balance our budgets, we will deploy our services.
Trump said on Monday he was deploying 800 National Guard troops to Washington and temporarily taking over the city's police department, an extraordinary assertion of presidential power in the nation's capital. It is the second time this summer that the Republican president has deployed troops to a democratically governed city. A federal trial began on Monday in San Francisco on whether Trump violated U.S. law by deploying National Guard troops to Los Angeles in June without the approval of California Governor Gavin Newsom. In a related development, several dozen protesters gathered in downtown Washington, D.C. to condemn U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to place the city's police department under federal control and deploy National Guard troops. Gathered just blocks away with the White House looming in the background, protesters erupted in a chorus of boos.
Growing up in Washington, D.C., it's very hard to see this city being captured by Donald Trump and making everybody live in fear. I don't approve of it. I just think it's a bad move, and the backlash is going to be really severe against him and his administration. And that's why I don't feel safe any longer in this city because of what it's doing against its citizenry.
Trump said he was deploying the National Guard across Washington, D.C. and taking over the city's police department in the hopes of reducing crime, even as the mayor has noted that crime is falling in the nation's capital. The Pentagon later said 800 soldiers were activated on Monday, with 100 to 200 of them supporting law enforcement. Colombian senator and presidential hopeful Miguel Uribe, who was shot in the head at a campaign event 2 months ago, died in the early hours of Monday at the age of 39. Uribe, a member of a prominent political family and a lawmaker for the right-wing opposition, was shot in Bogota on 7th June, where he was speaking to try to secure his party's nomination for 2026 elections.
Salud mental.
The attack was the worst outbreak of political violence in some 2 decades and evoked memories of the turbulent years of the 1980s and 1990s, when 4 presidential candidates were murdered in separate attacks blamed on drug cartels. Several suspects were arrested after the attack, including a 15-year-old who is believed to have fired the shots at Uribe. The background to the offence is still unclear. Besides his wife, son and stepdaughters, Uribe is also survived by his father and sister. According to the Public Prosecutor's Office, the alleged mastermind of the attack leads a group of contract killers and is said to have linked to splinter groups of the far-left guerrilla organisation FARC. The security situation has improved following a peace agreement which concluded in 2016. However, parts of the country are still controlled by illegal groups. Dozens of Indian opposition leaders were detained in New Delhi on Monday as they marched to the Election Commission in a rare public protest against what they say are electoral malpractices. Around 300 opposition leaders, including Rahul Gandhi of the main opposition Congress party, marched from the parliament to the office of the Independent Election Panel but were stopped by police some distance away.
क्योंकि सच्चाई देश के सामने है और ये जो लड़ाई है ये राजनीतिक नहीं है, ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की लड़ाई है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन को बचाने की लड़ाई है, वन मैन वन वोट की लड़ाई है, इसीलिए हमें साफ प्योर वोटर लिस्ट चाहिए.
The credibility of elections has rarely been questioned in recent decades, and some analysts say the opposition accusations could damage Prime Minister Narendra Modi as he navigates one of the toughest periods of his 11 years in office. Gandhi and Congress have alleged that voters' lists in states where the party laws are corrupted, with voters' names deleted or included more than once to rig elections in favour of Modi Bharatiya Janata Party. The BJP and the Election Commission have rejected the accusations. Nvidia to pay US 15% of revenue from sales of AI chip to China. Stay tuned.
Menggosok baju sekaligus boleh menjimatkan elektrik.
South Korean President Lee Jae-myung and Vietnamese Communist Party Secretary General Tu Lam agreed to nearly double bilateral trade to $150 billion by the year 2030 during negotiations in Seoul on Monday, pledging closer cooperation amid US trade tariffs and global uncertainty. During the meeting, Lee and Tu adopted a joint declaration aimed at deepening the comprehensive strategic partnership established 3 years ago, encompassing areas such as trade, security, science and technology, and cultural exchanges. The agreement coincides with the 10th anniversary of their free trade agreement and targets balanced and sustainable growth. Vietnam is South Korea's third largest trading partner, following China and the US, with over 10,000 Korean companies operating in Vietnam. The bilateral trade volume stood at $86.7 billion in the year 2024. The new deals include training and technology transfer for Vietnam's first nuclear power plants, with 4 reactors planned by 2035 as part of the country's national energy security strategy. Japan's Nikkei share average powered to an all-time high on Tuesday, swept up by sharp gains for tech stocks as it caught up with peak scale earlier this year by other major global stock markets. The Nikkei 225 rose as much as 2.5% to 42,867.69 in morning trade session, exceeding the previous high of 42,426.77 set on 11 July 2024. In a rollercoaster ride in 2024, the Nikkei had exceeded a record that had stood since 1989 during Japan's bubble economy. Steep gains by tech shares helped the Nikkei finally get over the line, with SoftBank Group soared 6.7% and semiconductor industry heavyweights Advantas and Lasertech jumped more than 5%. Global equities stumble after US President Donald Trump's Liberation Day announcement of sweeping tariffs on imports from dozens of countries into the US. Shares have since more than recouped those losses as trade concerns abated and enthusiasm over artificial intelligence companies soared. US President Donald Trump on Monday confirmed reports that semiconductor giant NVIDIA would pay the United States 15% of its revenues from sales of certain artificial intelligence chips to China. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Trump argued that NVIDIA's H20 chips are obsolete despite previously being targeted for export restrictions.
Obsolete chip. Well, and then 15% of profits.
You mean the
come back.
20s? No. This is an old chip that China already has. But the H20 is obsolete. You know, it's one of those things, but it still has a market. So I said, listen, I want 20% if I'm going to approve this for you, for the country, for our country, for the U.S. I don't want it myself.
The California-based company produces some of the world's most advanced semiconductors but cannot ship its most cutting-edge chips to China due to concerns that Beijing could use them to enhance military capabilities. NVIDIA developed the H20, a less powerful version of its AI processing unit specifically for export to China. The plan stalled when the Trump administration tightened export licensing requirements in April. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang met the Trump at the White House last week and agreed to give the federal government the cut from its revenues, a highly unusual arrangement in the international tech trade, according to various reports. The Cuban peso traded on the informal market at an all-time low of 400 to the dollar on Monday. While the partial dollarization of the state-dominated economy gained momentum, it had stoked social tensions amid scarcity of basic goods, runaway inflation, and deteriorating infrastructure and public services. The import-dependent country's government mainly blames US sanctions targeting foreign exchange earnings for the crisis that has led to an 11% contraction of the economy since 2019. Its Prime Minister Manuel Marrero said that a partial dollarization was needed to capture greenbacks circulating in the country as part of efforts to fix the economy. According to Miami-based tracker El Toc, the peso has depreciated nearly 25% this year. The currency's weakening this year coincided with the government's move to open retail outlets that accept only convertible currency in cash, foreign credit cards, or a state-issued dollar card.
400 pesos el dólar. Estamos hablando ya de un dinero bastante pésimo a cuanto al salario que nosotros podamos tener, lo que somos salariados de 2,000, de 3,000 pesos, de 5,000. Tira la cuenta cuánto dólar compra con ellos y a qué puede hacer con eso. No compra nada, al final tiene que, para comprar un equipo de electrodoméstico tiene que estar como 5 o 6 años casi juntando por el salario y el precio que tiene.
The dollarization and inflation have increased inequality in a country where about 40% of the population has no access to foreign currency through remittances or other sources. The dollar-less population generally does not earn enough in state jobs or on pensions to meet basic needs. At least one person died and 10 were wounded Monday after blast at U.S. Steel plant in the state of Pennsylvania. U.S. Steel said the incident happened at around 11 a.m. local time on Monday and that emergency teams were immediately dispatched to the scene. State's Governor Josh Shapiro said in a post on X that multiple explosions occurred at the U.S. Steel Clacton Coke Works. He added injured employees have now been transported to local hospitals to receive care and search and rescue efforts remain active at the plant. Authorities said one victim who had previously been reported missing was rescued and taken to a hospital for treatment, adding that 9 others were transported to area hospitals to be treated for a variety of injuries. The Clacton Coke Works is the largest coking factory in the United States, a facility where coal is processed to produce coke, a key fuel in steel making. Firefighters in northwestern Spain struggled on Monday to contain a wildfire that damaged a Roman-era mining site and forced hundreds of residents to evacuate. The firefighting effort faced many difficulties due to high temperatures and winds of up to 40 kilometers per hour. Environment Minister for the Castile and Leon region, Juan Carlos Suarez Quinones, said that people are not allowed to return until safety in their communities is absolutely guaranteed. It was estimated that about 700 people remain displaced. It was reported that 4 people, including 2 firefighters, suffered minor injuries. The blaze broke out on Sunday near the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Las Medulas, a Roman gold mining area famed for its striking red landscape in northwestern Spain. Spain has been in the grip of a heat wave for the past week, with temperatures nearing 400 Celsius in many areas and fueling wildfires. The northwestern Castile and Leon region alone has seen 13 fires in the past 3 days. Palace lost appeal to play in the Conference League. That and more in our sports segment.
Amanat Perdana Perkhidmatan Awam kali ke-20 MAPA akan disempurnakan oleh Perdana Menteri Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim secara langsung dari PICC Putrajaya Jumaat 15 Ogos 2025 3:15 petang hanya di TV1 saluran Berita RTM dan RTM3. Perkhidmatan awam Madani, teras kecemerlangan.
Crystal Palace have lost their appeal against UEFA's decision to drop them from the Europa League to the third-tier Conference League in a multi-club ownership case. Palace, who qualified for the Europa League as FA Cup winners, appealed against UEFA's decision last month. The appeal came days before New York Jets co-owner Robert Woody Johnson completed the purchase of John Textor-founded Eagle Football holding stake in Palace. Textor has also resigned from Lyon's board of directors, with Michelle Kang appointed chairwoman and president. UEFA demoted Palace last month while allowing Olympique Lyonnais to play in the Europa League as, at the time, the Eagle Football Group were majority owners of Lyon, while Textor owned a controlling stake in Palace. As both Lyon and Palace had qualified for the Europa League, the French club were allowed to keep their place as they had finished higher in their respective leagues. Palace won the Community Shield on Sunday, beating Liverpool in a penalty shootout, are set to play in the Conference League's qualifying playoff round later this month. Nottingham Forest will replace Palace in the Europa League, having finished 7th in the English top tier. Atletico Madrid have signed Italy forward Giacomo Raspadori from Serie A champions Napoli on a 5-year contract. Raspadori, who also won the Scudetto with Napoli in 2023, has joined with a reported fee of 20 million euros. The 25-year-old scored 6 goals for Napoli last term in his 3rd season with the club after signing from Sassuolo in 2022. Atletico, who finished 3rd in La Liga last season, have made several signings this summer as they bid to launch a title challenge. Raspadori was part of Italy's Euro 2020 winning squad and has scored 9 goals in 40 appearances for the national team. Other high-profile rivals to the Metropolitano include winger Alex Baena from Villarreal, David Hango from Feyenoord, and American midfielder Johnny Cardoso from Real Betis. Manchester City winger Jack Grealish is reported to have agreed to join Everton on loan for the 2025-26 season. Grealish fell out of favour with City boss Pep Guardiola last season and made just 7 starts in the Premier League. The 29-year-old was let out of City squad for the Club World Cup in the United States amid speculation that he was set to leave the Etihad Stadium. Everton have now agreed a deal for Grealish, who earns a reported £300,000 per week ahead of the new Premier League campaign, which starts for the Toffees at Leeds on 18 August. The England international joined City from Aston Villa in 2021 for a then British record fee of £100 million. Grealish has won 3 Premier League titles, the Champions League and the FA Cup with City, but his form had dipped significantly since he played a key role in the 2022-23 treble-winning campaign. He'll rank as Everton's biggest signing since the end of last season after a quiet summer in the transfer market for boss David Moyes. On to tennis. Third seed, Alexander Zverev breezes past US wildcard Nishes Basavaredi 6-3, 6-3 in the night session on Monday. Zverev needed just 66 minutes to get past Basavaredi, a 20-year-old ranked now 109th in the world. The German put 41 of his 50 first serves in play and didn't face a breakpoint. Basavaredi saved one match point with a blistering service return, but Zverev secured the win with his 12th ace. He will meet American Brandon Nakashima in the third round. Meanwhile, American Ben Shelton come off his first Masters 1000 title in Toronto, eased through 6-3, 3-1 when Camilo Ugo Carabelli retired with a knee injury. Fresh off winning the biggest title of his career in Toronto, American Shelton was up a set in a break when Ugo Carabelli stopped short and clutched his knee in pain in the fourth game of the second set. The Argentine tried to play on after taking a medical timeout but could not continue, clearing a path for Shelton to the next phase Spaniard Roberto Bautista Agut, who beat Briton Cam Norrie 6-4, 6-3 earlier in the day.
Perlawanan bola sepak Liga Super di Stadium Merah Kuning yang bergema. The Red Giants kini bersedia mempertahankan maruah di hadapan penyokong sendiri menanti cabaran dari Brunei. Selasa 12 Ogos, saksikan Selangor FC bertemu DPMM FC 8.15 minit malam di saluran OK dan saluran sukan RTM. Juga penerimaan langsung di RTM Click.
That wraps up our bulletin this afternoon. In our top story, Trump delays high US tariffs on Chinese goods to another 90 days. For more news updates, do join us tonight at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 or saluran Berita RTM. In case you miss us, you can always stream us, our news online or RTM Click's website and mobile application. Till then, I'm Sahih Samsudin, Malaysia Madani, Rakyat, Disantuni. Thank you for watching.